Welcome everybody today to the Career Trek. Thank you for joining us for the UW System Career Trek featuring Baker Tilly, hosted by UW Eau Claire. My name is Alyssa Slobby. I'm a career counselor in the Advising, Retention, and Career Center here at UW Eau Claire, and I'm excited to be here with you today. Before we get started, I'd like to give a shout out to the Career Trek Committee for organizing and planning this year's events. I'd also like to give a huge thank you to Katie from Baker Tilly for joining us today for the Career Trek. We're excited to have you here with us. Before we get started, just a reminder, if you haven't had the opportunity to fill out the chat or fill out the registration form, it is located in the chat feature of Zoom. So please go ahead and do that at this point. We'll go ahead and share that registration information with your university. The Career Trek today is being recorded, and it will be located on the Career Trek website within the next week. So if you want to go back and rewatch any of today's event, it will be located on the website. As you can see, it is located on the top left screen of the screen. Next week's Trek is going to feature Oneida Nation, hosted by UW Green Bay. So we hope you can join us at the same time on Tuesday, February 21st. If you have any questions during today's Trek, please go ahead and add those to the chat feature. We have saved some time at the end of today's event to answer any questions that you might have. So please, throughout the recording or throughout the event today, go ahead and add those to the chat feature. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to turn it over to Katie.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you everyone for having me with you here today. I'm really excited to spend some time with you. And as Alyssa said, if you have any questions, feel free to drop those into the chat as we have our conversation today. I would love to hear from you and any questions that you may have. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So I am Katie Robichon. I'm the campus recruiting manager at Baker Tilly. And so I oversee Minnesota, and then I oversee Wisconsin and DC as well. But my path is a little bit unique. I actually started out as a government auditor. My focus in school was forensic accounting with the intention of working for the IRS or the FBI one day. So I started in government auditing fresh out of school, and then I pivoted into tax. So I was in tax for 8 years and was most recently a tax manager at Baker Tilly. And then now I am in the campus recruiting space. So my path is kind of zigged and zagged, but all within the accounting space. So I'm really excited to talk to you here today from the side of being on the campus recruiting side, as well as knowing the practice side pretty well, and excited to share both with you. So we're going to talk a little bit about Baker Tilly, and if you have attended several of these, I'm sure you've had the chance to hear from some amazing firms in our space as well. And I'm here to talk to you today about what makes us different and unique. So we'll kind of go over a high level. So we're a CPA firm. So obviously we're specializing in the accounting space, but also in consulting. And the thing I really wanted to highlight here is we really care about unleashing and amplifying talent. And so that will come in a little bit when I talk about our values, but I do feel like we value the individual contributor and what it is that you value and infusing that into your job. And so that's really, really important for us as an organization. So we do have tax assurance as well as consulting, pretty evenly divided between the three, almost a third each, but a little bit stronger in the consulting space, which I know is a huge area of interest for a lot of students, but also want to give some love to tax and audit since I come from those spaces as well. So our core values, this is what I feel like really makes us different. You know, every company has the things that are really important to them, and these are the 5 things that are extremely important to us. But the one that really sticks out to me is passion. And so we want our people to be passionate and to be doing something that they're passionate about. And I feel like even for myself, my leaders really invested time into me understanding what gives me excitement in my job every day. And that is connecting with people and helping to guide people on their career path. Hence how I am now on campus recruiting. And so I really appreciate that they valued the contributions that I brought to the table, but also saw there's this other piece of me that's really important to me. And how can I make that the focus of my job? And so segueing from being a tax manager into the campus side isn't necessarily a linear path, but they would have rather keep me engaged with the areas I'm passionate about than lose me. And I'm just one example of many times that it's happened throughout our firm. And so that's something that I think is really unique. I also think belonging is extremely important to us, to seeing individuals as true individuals. And again, your unique background, your unique perspective, your culture, your values, all of that makes you who you are. And we want to honor that and value that and give you a voice with that, much more than I've seen in other places. And so when we say we focus on like diversity and inclusion, we genuinely mean it, because we want to hear your specific perspective, because we know that we're far better when we have varying perspectives than when we have all of the same. So again, these are some areas that I feel like make us different and make us unique. So we have these different areas that are focus areas throughout the firm. So we have our day-to-day tax and insurance and consulting work, the compliance side, but then we have these other areas that you can be really involved in. And people start programs for all sorts of areas that they're really, really passionate about. I am really, really passionate about our GROW initiative, which is helping women in the workplace. That's something that is extremely important to me. But we also have these other areas, again, focusing on diversity or bridging the gap between generations or moms in the workplace, or all of these different areas that you can connect with other like-minded people and people with differing thought, right, to further initiatives. And these different programs host different events and things like that, but it's a unique way to infuse things that matter to you also into your career within the framework of accounting, which I think is really unique. Stewardship Week is also something that is extremely important to us. So through both our internships and then in our regular full-time positions, you have the opportunity to volunteer in August as well as in the spring. I would say that we volunteer more than that, but these are like kind of firm sponsored events where we're really rooting into the community and spending our time with people and really, honoring and hearing their experiences and offering our time and our energy to them to help the causes that they're really passionate about. So these are things that are near and dear. It's not just a check the box thing. It's very much ingrained into the culture of our offices of how can we live and breathe what we're preaching about stewardship in the various markets. And also something I would say that is unique is the way that we structure our career development. So, busy season, you're going to get a high volume of repetition and you're going to grow a lot in that. You're going to have a lot of client contact and really focus on your technical skills. But there's also things all throughout the year that we want to help you with to become a well-rounded professional. So how can we help you have a solid foundation at the beginning of your career or wherever you may be at in your career? And we do that through a coaching relationship and then through a buddy relationship. So a buddy is going to be someone that is close to you. Maybe they're a recent associate or a recent intern that can answer more day-to-day questions that you might have, or questions that maybe you might not be as comfortable asking someone else. And then a coach is really working with you one-on-one on your specific career goals. So whether it's an internship or whether it's a full-time position, what is it that you're hoping to get out of that? Do you really want to focus on client skills? Do you really want to do research? Do you want to collaborate with other people? Do you want to focus on networking? Whatever it is that your specific goals on, they're going to be focused on helping you build that platform. Because again, this is centered on you. This is your career, and we really value you as an individual contributor. And so I would say all of our career development is really focused on skills that you can take with you wherever it is that you may go. So in our time together, I also kind of wanted to talk about some of the opportunities that we have for students. This is a question that I get asked a lot, especially from freshmen and sophomores. Everyone is so eager. How do I get involved? How do I, have opportunities with Baker Tilly or with another firm? So I will start with our internships. So typically our internships are going to be in the spring or in the summer. In the spring, you're going to be able to see, obviously, a lot more of our high volume activities. In the summer, it's still going to be the same work, just extended, but there's also a lot more room for networking and more professional development growth, I would say, that's kind of built in the summer timeframe. And for that, we would like to see anybody that is within like 2 years of graduating from their program. So I know that that can vary depending on how many credits you get in high school, as far as if that means you're a sophomore or a junior or any of that. But typically it's about 2 years away from your 150. But then we have a lot of sophomores who come to us who say, hey, I'm ready for an opportunity. I really would like to be involved. So we've recently come up with opportunities for sophomores as well. Our BT prep is one of the areas where you're preparing like a lot of 1040. So you can do it part-time or you can do it full-time during school, but that kind of gives you that opportunity to get your foot in the door, kind of some access to the public accounting structure, to busy season, and also to the tax realm. And then we also have our Spotlight program, which is for anyone who wants to know more information about Baker Tilly. We usually have a panel of different people from our teams that come and join, and they can answer questions and things like that, so that you can get to know more about us as an institution and how we're unique and different. And then we also have our full-time roles. So after you hit the 150 in credits for our audit and tax roles, and then 120 for our consulting roles, then we also have full-time positions that start. We have start dates in the spring, start dates in the summer, and start dates in the fall as well for all of those. So as I was saying, here is kind of a debrief on our Spotlight program, and when it's going to be this year is in May. We did do this with you specifically in mind in this market. So we looked at when finals are, and it was a little challenging to hit all of the schools, but we definitely tried to look at where finals are. And so if this conflicts with your finals week at all, please let us know, because we would like to try to get you access to this program and into this if you're interested. So please let me know. Next, I kind of just wanted to touch on our interviewing process. And this is going to look a little bit different depending on if we're in our what we call our campus season or if we're in our non-campus season. So our campus season is heavily in the fall, and typically we would recruit a year in advance. I know that there are several UW schools on this call, and so I know that some schools have the matching program, so that's going to look a little bit different if you do have the matching program. And then we also have our second season that is in the spring. And then we have our non-campus season, which would typically be in the summer and then in the winter time. So if we are in a campus season, we would typically see you on campus and have our on-campus events, which would lead to our on-campus interviews. And then we would have 2 conversational interviews with you after the fact of that. So you meet the initial person, and then we would have 2 more follow-up discussions. If it's in a non-campus season, then we would typically meet you by you applying online, and then we would do a phone screen with one of our recruiters and then 2 additional interviews. So that process is to help you get to kind of have exposure to different people, to meet with us, hopefully somewhat a combination of in-person and virtual, just depending on the time of year that it is. And then there's a couple of different types of interviews. So I wanted to briefly touch on this, as I'm sure you will run into multiple different kinds of interviews. And so when you do sign up for an interview, it's definitely okay for you to ask, can you let me know what type of interview it would be? So there's unstructured versus structured. Most are going to typically be more on the structured side if they're trying to analyze like specific skills for a technical role. If it's more of an entry level and there's less technical, is where you're going to see more open-ended or conversational type discussions. And so for us, we have pieces of our interviews that are more conversational based, where we're just trying to get to know you. And then we also have a more structural side. And so our structural side is behavioral. So typically a behavioral question is going to ask you to provide examples of what you did in the past that's going to indicate a certain behavior, a certain level of knowledge or a skill set. And so typically what we're looking at is like prior behavior being indicative of future behavior. So decisions that you did make that maybe you learned from, or decisions you made that you're proud of and that you would do in the future. So that's typically what we're looking for in those types of questions. Now, why would we do this? So typically your past behavior is the best predictor of your future success. So especially when you're in an academic environment where you might not have as much of the real work examples for us, then that's where we're looking for other situations to try to predict how it would be for you in the future. I think there's also a lot to be said about the lessons that you may learn during this process. And so we're really looking at, can you articulate what you're able to learn? Can you let us know how you grew from those experiences? And because we're all continuously growing, but we want to see that you kind of have that self-awareness of growing through the process of whatever it is that you've learned through prior situations. So some tips that I would like to share with you, I end up doing a lot of phone screens. I meet with a lot of students. It typically is hundreds each semester, which is amazing to meet so many of your amazing faces. But something that I would encourage you is to truly be authentic to yourself. Show up as you are and not as you think you're supposed to be, or as someone else might be. Some people are louder or more boisterous, or what we would characterize as outgoing, and other people are more on the quieter and reserved side. And all of that is fantastic, right? I just want you to be true to who you are and not try to be something different, especially in the interview environment, because part of what we're doing is making sure that you feel like you fit in here. And for you to be authentic throughout the interview process will really help you determine whether this is for you, and for us to determine whether this is the right fit for you. Also, showing enthusiasm and preparing yourself for the interaction goes a long way. We can definitely tell when students have done some research on the company or on the people that they're going to interview with, if they know that ahead of time. And I know it's a little tricky because you're talking to a lot of firms back to back all together. And we know that, but it does stand out when someone helps us feel like, okay, you did intentionally want us, or you did want to talk to us specifically, versus, yeah, you were just here and I just popped by. You can at a career fair do a quick Google if you see a company and just look at, like even just a little screenshot that Google says of what their value is or something like that. And even to just infuse that into the conversation as you walk up to the table will go a long way in that interaction or at the beginning of your interview. For follow-up communication, it's always good to have that. We as the recruiters will typically be driving the communication, but you are also in the driver's seat. So if there is something that you want to know, or if you have a specific timeline that you need to get back to another company or things like that, we're not mind readers. I try really hard, but I'm not quite there yet. So if there are things that you need me to know about the process, feel free to communicate that, because I want this to be the best possible experience for you. And also ask questions. Coming prepared with a few questions is something I would always recommend, of things that you really do want to know. And this kind of leads into what questions to ask. So I get asked a lot of questions, and they range, but I get asked the culture question quite a bit. And so I wanted to address this one. We get asked, what's your culture like? Or tell me about your culture. I always flip this back and say, tell me what you would like to know about our culture, because that can mean a bunch of different things. Like, do you mean how often people are going to happy hours, or how much they interact outside of the office? Are you asking how many hours people are working? Are you asking what stewardship is like? Are you asking how often we bring food into the office? Are you, how often do you get to interact with upper level management, or do the interns all collaborate together? I mean, culture can mean so many different things to people. And so if you're asking that question, come with a pointed question of what is it that you want to know about that specific culture, and not just a general, what's your culture like? Because it can just go in too many directions, I would say. I also would encourage you to ask, and this is particularly important if you are interviewing as an associate or an entry-level person for somewhere different than where you interned, is to ask, what are the pressure points within the specific team or within the firm, right? There's always ways that we can grow and improve. And I think it's important for management to be transparent about the areas that they might struggle with. Maybe they're top heavy and have more people in management and less preparers, or maybe they have a lot of preparers and not as many directors or partners of that group. Maybe they have a lot of small clients. Maybe they have a bunch of huge clients that take a lot of hours, or, there could be a lot of different pressure points within the team, but I think that's a fair ask for you to know going into the team. And I don't think it should make you stray away from it, but it at least gives you that frame of reference of kind of knowing the situation that you're walking into and everything that's there. And then also what their training and development structure is like. I kind of alluded to what some of ours is, but you should know, what does technical training look like? What does ongoing training look like? Especially for CPAs, you have continuing professional education. What opportunities do they provide for that? And is that a collaborative space, or are you just expected to do that all on your own? Or how do they keep elevating you as a professional as you grow throughout your career? And those are all really important questions for you to ask. And then as well, what are the next steps? I love it when students ask me this question instead of kind of leaving it in the gray. And we do try to relay, here's the next steps, but definitely if you don't feel like you have enough clear vision of what's going to happen, let me know and I will get you a better vision. But especially if you're talking to other places or multiple places at once, they should be able to provide timelines for you so that you're able to make an easy and informed decision. So that's kind of in a nutshell, all of the things that I wanted to talk to you about. So these 2 QR codes would take you to our consulting space, and then the careers on our tax and audit side. I also have information to our Spotlight program. There's lots of information. I just didn't want to inundate you with all of the QR codes. And I will add in the plug that we are visiting a lot of our campuses. We've been at several of the UW schools the last few weeks, and then we'll continue to do that rolling into the next month or so. So look for us at your local career fair. If you don't see us at your local career fair, feel free to reach out, ask us questions. Know that we are always here as a resource for you. That's literally my job now that I'm on this side, is to be a resource for you, but to really help you feel comfortable in your decision. And again, there's a lot of people along the way who want to help you, whether it's your career services and your advisors or your professors, or, even recruiters. We're all here for you to help you make the best informed decision so that you feel like you found a home for yourself that is ideal for all of us, for you to find that placement. And maybe that's a Baker Tilly, maybe that's somewhere else, but our goal is to help you along that journey however we can. So thank you so much. That's all I formally had prepared, but I will now go back over to Alyssa to see if there are any questions.
Yes, thank you, Katie. That was fantastic. Students and other participants, please go ahead and add those questions to the chat. I'm also going to drop in the registration form one more time. If you haven't had the opportunity to fill that out, please do so at this point. And I'm just going to give it a couple seconds here as students are writing in. I think, Katie, I might throw a question your way to start off with, just to kind of get the ball rolling here.
Sure.
So you talked a lot about the different opportunities for students, both at like the Spotlight program, internships, and then full-time opportunities. In your opinion, when you think about students and their applications, what skills or qualities would you recommend that students highlight in their application materials to really set themselves apart from other students?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I really like to see involvement on campus in the areas that you're passionate about. Again, it kind of humanizes you and shows me the areas that you really care about. So we definitely look at that. Again, area interest areas or leadership areas, those types of things we like to see when you're involved with the accounting student organizations or whatever your school might call that. Or affinity groups like NABA or those types of groups, again, showing, or women in business, those types of areas I feel help give you exposure to a lot of different things, one, to your peers, and a lot of those peers you'll end up working with in the workplace in one capacity or another. So I think those are invaluable for you to be a part of, but highlighting those. And As your resume changes, as your experience changes, I would say that your resume should change. So this is a tip that I would give you as well. Before you have an internship, typically you're going to put your schooling at the top and then maybe like related courses and some skill sets. As you have an internship, then that should go on the top above your education, because that's more relatable to the new job that you're applying to. So in that, I would definitely highlight, what did you do at those locations? Sometimes when I look at it, people will just list an internship, but I'm not sure what they did or kind of what the day-to-day was like. And so it's hard for me to see if it relates to this position. So if you also can highlight like the major tasks that you did, I think that that's really important as well.
Thank you. We've got a question in the chat here. Once employed at Baker Tilly, are there opportunities for professional development? And maybe you could give some examples if there are, Katie.
Yes, absolutely. So I would say professional development happens from a lot of different places. We do have like a centralized learning system that's going to give you access to hundreds of different areas. And so those are hybrid between, there's some that are live virtual, there's some that are kind of pace as you go. So you're able to access both styles. I really like the live classes and the people that you're able to interact with throughout the firm. But then we also host things locally for our different offices. And so like an office may host like a professional development activity, but then we also might have the individual teams hosting things as well. So I guess you're getting it on an individual level, as well as a team level, as well as an office, as well as a firm. So we really do try to develop you not only in the technical skills, but soft skills as well. Something that we've noticed is typically people are really driven just towards technical skills their first 3 or 4 years. And then as they're preparing to go into the management role, they hadn't really focused on people skills or soft skills or those things that you need for a manager. And then we're trying to teach people 5 years into their career how to become a manager. And so what we're trying to do instead is really give you those skills as you go to build a more solid foundation throughout your time, so that you feel like, okay, I understand how to interact with people in these varying ways, or communication skills, or strategic thinking and strategic planning. We try to give a lot more exposure to the business of our business, because sometimes when you're first starting out, you just do things because someone told you to do it that way, and you don't really understand what is the why, what is the bigger picture. I'm such a big picture person. So as much as I can kind of take it to a high picture so that someone can see, okay, how does this piece that I'm doing fit into the whole puzzle, and why does it matter? Or why do the decisions that I make change how my organization is run? And then I would say, again, through those groups, like through DIBS, through SOAR, those types of things, there's a lot of professional development that exists in those spaces as well.
How do students, or how does a student set themselves apart from, let me try that again. How does a student set themselves apart from others for internships and career opportunities?
Absolutely. And I would think this has a lot to do with your interactions, right? Whether we meet you in person or over the phone. Again, we have to remember from a recruiter standpoint, we do talk to hundreds of students at once, almost like you're talking to dozens of firms at the same time as well. When you go to the career fair, think about what stands out to you at a career fair with the different firms that you talk to. Maybe it's the flashiest, coolest ones, maybe, or maybe it's like the most authentic interactions that you have, where people are seeing you as people and they value you, and they're taking something out of the conversation beyond just the typical very narrow accounting talk. And so I would say it's the same for us as well. I want to see you as a person. I want to see things that matter about you. And when someone brings up something that is unique and different, they stick out in my mind, as we leave. And that could be a bunch of different types of topics, but I can see it when you're being genuine and you're being authentic. And it's okay to be nervous. I guess I'll address that piece as well. I know a lot of things have been virtual the last couple of years. And so I know that typically when you're in your junior year or senior year, you've gone to career fairs for years. And now we're at a situation where people haven't been doing that for years, because of things being virtual. And so it's okay to be nervous, but kind of pushing through that nervousness, right? And trying to not just focus on that and focus on the interaction at hand. Take a deep breath or center yourself or whatever it is that you need to do, but know that you don't have to be perfectly polished in those conversations. I'm not looking for something that is rehearsed or that you memorized. And to be honest, it's pretty easy for us to tell when someone is like that, because then we'll throw them a question they're not expecting and they'll go, So I would rather it be more authentic for you, to where it doesn't feel so much pressure in that conversation. Show up and be yourself, ask the questions that matter to you. And it's probably going to stick out a lot more in my mind if you're asking things that I know matter to you specifically than you just Googling what are good questions to ask an employer.
Thank you. Katie, can you just clarify the recruitment timelines? I know you had mentioned campus and then non-campus kind of recruiting times. If a student is interested in like the internship, how early should they be looking ahead and applying?
Absolutely. So for both Wisconsin and Minnesota, we do rolling recruitment and rolling interviews. The one caveat is the schools that have the matching program where they only give us that short window. But if the school does not require that for the matching program, then we're doing rolling interviews throughout the year. And so we've kind of seen it all over the board of area of interest. We posted our spring and summer 2024 roles in both the Wisconsin and Minnesota markets back in November. So they were open well in advance, I guess, of those opportunities. Now we still have opportunities that are open as of right now for spring and summer in both of those markets. For our upcoming summer, those were filled quite a while ago. So again, we're looking more into 2024. So I would say typically it's about a year before the season exists for an internship. Some people are very eager, and when we were on campus in the fall, we did hire some 2024 folks as well. So that would have been 2 years in advance, which is on kind of this end of the spectrum. I wouldn't say that's as common. I would say about a year out is typically what we would see. There are some opportunities still available in some of our markets. I know Milwaukee still does have a few internships for this summer. In Minnesota, we do not. And I believe in Appleton, we also do not. So it's kind of dependent per market. But I would say going to the fall recruiting fairs and the spring recruiting fairs are really important. And that's where the majority of our candidates are going to come from. Even though we're still doing rolling throughout the year, we understand as well that candidates want to be able to look at multiple firms at the same time also. So it's okay if that's what you would like. We would just encourage you to then wait until you have the fairs instead of, interviewing now. If I'm not going to decide until April, that's okay. Just wait until you meet us on campus. You don't need to start the interview process quite yet. If you are comparing firms, then just batch them all together so that you have more real-time comparison. I think if you spread it out, it's a little bit harder to remember what your interactions were like with each of the different firms. So that's kind of what I would say on that timeline.
Well, I'm not seeing, just kidding. We do have another question in the chat. Are there different major tasks in spring versus summer for internships?
Yeah, and so that's going to vary a little bit. So I'll talk about the different service lines to kind of give better line of sight. So on the tax side, you're primarily preparing work papers that support the tax return in busy season. And so that's what we call compliance work. And so you would do all of those tax returns that are due by March 15th or April 15th. However, there's some tax returns that get extended. And so those ones will extend to September 15th and October 15th. So there are still tax returns and work papers to prepare in the summer. We also do estimates throughout the year. So there's quarterly estimates for individuals that have to pay taxes. So those are calculated throughout the year as well. So it's similar in that you would be doing compliance work, the tax return work, and the estimates all throughout the year, in the spring and in the summer. What differs is the volume isn't quite the same. And so in the spring busy season, a lot of taxpayers want their returns filed by 3/15 or 4/15. So you're going to get a much higher volume of the returns that are due then. And then it's kind of more just steady throughout the summer into the fall for the ones that have been extended, once you get in like the final information from the client and things like that. There's also more room in the summer, like I said, for more professional development and networking opportunities, because you have less of a volume of the tax return, you have more availability for that. There is still networking and professional development in the spring. It's just more technically focused, whereas in the summer, it's going to be more like professional growth focused, I would say. On the audit side, the audit is typically done in the spring busy season. And if they're a publicly traded company, then they have to have their audit done by April 30th. And so many of the audits get completed by then, and there's not really as many audits that are extended unless they are have a different year end, and then they could be later than that time. So if they have a different year end, then they are prepared in the summer, but they're also doing interim work. So they test all throughout the work for the audit side. So you're doing testing and planning, so sections of the audit all throughout the year. So you're essentially auditing all throughout the year. It's just you might not finalize the reports like you would in the spring. And then they also do some benefit and 401k plans in the summer as well, but they don't typically do in the spring. On the consulting side, it's much more project-based. And so there's not a peak or a busy season in consulting. It's more, hey, this project came in and we have 3 weeks to look at this project and to analyze. So there might be busier times or more hours during that 3-week period, but it's not quite as predictable as like a spring or a fall busy season. And those projects are going to change all throughout the year. I'll also add for consulting, typically once you fix the problem for the client, then they're not a repeat client. And so again, that engagement might be 3 weeks or 9 weeks or things like that, but it wouldn't be necessarily you're a client again the next year. Whereas on the tax and audit side, typically you're doing the same clients year over year, to where you would get more efficient, and then you would be able to expand your skill set into different service areas or things like that if you were interested in different types of clients.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from our participants today? Okay. I think
I know that I haven't been able to give you all the information possible that you would want to know. And so if there are questions offline that you would like to ask me, again, my contact information is available for you, or you can go through Alyssa or any of your career services should have our contact information. But I would love to chat with you on any questions that you might have. I'm very passionate about this area and helping students kind of find their path. I'm a CPA as well, and so I get asked a lot of questions about the CPA exam and when to sit for each sections. And I know you talk to your professors and career advisors as well on that, but no, that's also on the table. So whatever questions you might have about the different roles that we have, or working at a mid-sized firm. I also worked at a smaller firm before this as well. So I see that something else came in, so I don't know if I sparked a question. Yeah. Look at me, I rambled. I was like, I can get another question.
Yeah. So in the chat, it says, I'm going to apply for full-time jobs. Can you talk about what I should do after the meeting? Kind of like the next steps.
After the interview?
Ooh, Jane, do you want to clarify that? Do you mean after the interview process, or do you mean like literally after today's meeting? Today, after today.
So like specifically with Baker Tilly, if you were interested. So again, both of these QR codes lead to the open positions that we have. So that's going to show you all of our open positions, and you can filter it by the office. But I also would love to hear from you, if we spent time together today. But then typically what we would do is you would apply, and then we would initiate a phone screen with you to kind of get to know you and hear your area of interest. And then if that aligns together with what that office is looking for, then we would move on to the next phase in the interview process, which would be the 2 interview conversations with our team. And that's where you can ask your questions, they can ask their questions as well throughout the process.
Katie, is there any last piece of advice you would like to give with students and participants today?
Yeah, one, I just want to thank you all for your time and spending time with me. I know there's a lot of people who sit in my shoes, and sometimes it's hard to decide, how do I choose? How do I pick? And I've seen a lot of students put a lot of pressure on themselves, and it is a big decision and it is important. However, know that you have so many resources behind you. And also, you don't have to know your whole entire career right now. It's going to zig, it's going to zag. I mean, look at me, right? Like I was forensic accounting, IRS, 08 tax, 08 campus recruiting, and I appreciate all of the experiences that I've had. And so again, at this point in your schooling, you are not expected to know what your future is going to look like. Even upon graduation, you don't have to know. All you have to know is the next step that you're going to take. And so I guess my advice would be take some of that pressure off of yourself of you're forever. I hear that a lot from students of, I can't make a choice yet. How do I know? And there's a lot of consulting with parents and grandparents and friends and cousins, friends, uncles, and career advisors and professors. And while all of that is really good, what's really important at the end of the day is, do you feel comfortable with your decision? Is it what you're looking for? And so what I try to advise students to do is come up with a list of what it is that you specifically are looking for in a company that you want to work for, or a group that you want to work with, or coworkers that you want, or types of clients you want to work on, or hours, or work-life balance, or these different types of things. Like whatever matters to you, make that list before you engage any companies and really think about, these would be deal breakers for me, or these are the things that I have to find. And then as you interact with the different companies, measure it against your own list, not someone else's list, not your friend's list, not any other list that someone else has, because you ultimately are going to work there. This is your job, your career, your platform, your future. And so evaluate if that company aligns with what it is that you're valuing. And as long as you do that, the step that you took is the right step. Even if you choose a different second step or you sidestep, it's never like a mistake. And that's where I think a lot of people put too much pressure on themselves of, I don't want to make a mistake. But also we learn and we grow from every experience that we have. So just know that you're going to grow and you're going to learn from every single thing that you choose from here on out. And all of those are experiences that you were supposed to have. So lean on the people that you have, the resources that you have to kind of demystify the process and support you through that, but be empowered to know that you have the ability to make that choice. And at the end of the day, it's going to be the right choice for you.
That was awesome advice. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being with us today, Katie, at the Career Track. It's been amazing. Just a reminder, students, this will be available on the Career Track's website within the next week. So if you do want to go back and rewatch any part of it, it will be available. And just another quick reminder here that next week's Career Track will be Oneida Nation, hosted by UW Green Bay. So we hope you can join us for that one as well. And once again, just thank you, Katie. Thank you to Baker Tilly for being here. It's been such a fantastic event. And thank you for sharing all the great opportunities that are available to students. So once again, students, thank you for joining us, and participants, and I hope you have a good day and happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day.